Well, it's official. Donald Trump was sentenced today, which is not a sentence at all, of course, out of deference to the fact that he's now the incoming felon-elect. But this does make him the first, well, soon to be, first ever convicted felon to serve as president of the United States. So many firsts. He's also, by the way, the first president in 45 years not to release any of his tax returns, the first president in 89 years to lose the presidency, the House, and the Senate in a single term, the first president in 129 years to lose the popular vote twice. He barely won it his third time around. It's a plurality, by the way, not an actual majority. The first president in 152 years to boycott his successor's inauguration, first president ever to fail to hit a 50% approval rating at any point during their presidency. He's still not there, and he's, by the way, not the president yet, but let's keep working on that one. The first president ever to be elected with the help of a foreign nation, probably twice. The first president ever to be impeached twice. First president ever to have a member of their own party vote for conviction in an impeachment trial. First president in modern history to leave office with a smaller workforce than they had when they took office. First president ever to refuse to concede defeat. First president to be banned from social media. First president to refuse to ensure a peaceful transfer of power. He did that again. First president to have their home searched for official national security documents. First president found liable of sexual abuse, defamation, and business fraud. First president criminally indicted. Also the second, third, and fourth, and the first president with a mugshot. So many firsts in such little time. Can't wait to see what comes next. My guest on today's episode is friend of the show, Bob Cesca. You guys know Bob. You can find him, of course, everywhere on social media, but also on the Bob Cesca Show. Bob is such an incredible person. He always makes me laugh. He makes me think. We have such a great time talking, and I want to collaborate with him a lot more moving forward because I think we have a good time together and keep each other sane. So that sounds like a good thing to me. All right, well, see you guys next time. Bye. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to what is for the moment being called on my end, the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast, because I am considering very strongly a name change due to some suggestions from the people who know things. But more than that, more importantly than that, welcome back to the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast for the moment, but also welcome Bob Cesca to my very first simulcast.
It's a simulcast. Yeah. It's a crossover episode. It's like when Captain America appears in the Scarlet Witch's movie or something. I don't know what I'm talking about suddenly. Yeah, but it's like the MCU. It's like the DCU. It's like one of those superhero movies where everyone comes together. That's what.
It's a mashup. The mashup of mashups because imagine Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Hulk fighting side by side.
There you
essentially.
go.
Yeah. We can talk about mashups all day long. I thought you'd be very proud of me. I referenced so many in my post yesterday on Substack. I mentioned so many mixed metaphors, but I mentioned Palpatine and Khan in the same essay.
Wow, I'm so proud of you. That's incredible. Palpatine and Khan from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Yes.
Excellent. Well done. I'm glad to hear that. That's it's important. It gives
it felt like
some nerd cred. Yeah.
Wait, I lied. But wait, Bob, there's more. I also referenced Sauron and orcs, which I now know a group of orcs, several names there are, but I'm not that kind of a deep dive dork, but Horde was what I ended up coming up with. But there are all these, because I was trying to name a group of orcs, but I ended up just going with Horde because that is what they can be. So Sauron, Khan, Chekhov's earworm, remember that?
Yes. Oh, that's horrifying. Yeah.
Right.
And nightmares about that.
Palpatine. Yeah. I think we're the same age, I think, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So did you remember we had a fancy VCR? That's how I saw it on the VHS. And I was like, I don't think I ever forgot it. I never forgot that scene.
And I'm such a hypochondriac. Every time I have even the slightest itch around my ear or in my ear, I'm like, okay, worm's going in there. It's going to burrow into my brain, and I'm going to become Khan's slave somehow. It's terrifying. It's a terrifying little scene with poor Chekhov. You're right. And
But
you know what? They never met. They never met. Khan was in an episode of the original series of Star Trek. Now I'm really nerding out.
okay.
But it was an episode where Chekhov didn't appear. So it was the first appearance of Chekhov and Khan on screen. And Chekhov gets that horrifying slug thing put into his ear. Yeah, it's just terrifying. Yeah.
And everyone has to watch. And the reason I cited it yesterday, and the reason it's so top of mind is because it kind of feels like this moment in time.
Yeah, it does.
We're all watching.
Yeah.
We're all watching. We're all watching our country get a slug put into its crawl across its face and go.
That's right. And then Khan wants to invade Greenland. What the hell is going on, Jojo?
It's Corinthian leather.
I started yelling on Stephanie's show this morning
Oh.
about that because
Stephanie this morning.
by and large, it was most of what that press conference was. It was all about Panama and Greenland and Canada and this insanity that no one asked for. This was never, I mean, even in MAGA circles, even on Fox News Channel and all the various MAGA entertainment complex podcasts, they weren't sitting there talking endlessly about, hey, you know what? We really should invade and occupy Greenland. And damn it, Donald Trump better do that if we get him elected. That's not even a point of conversation. Something he's decided to do, probably because the people around him just need to distract the old man and get him off on something while they enact Project 2025 and all of the insanity surrounding that. So
Yeah.
that's my theory. That just
Yeah.
like that worm into Chekhov's ear, they implanted these ridiculous notions into Donald Trump's head because it is actually loaded with brain worms, allegedly. And I'm the only one alleging that, but that's how that works.
At least he can sustain them with which apparently RFK Jr. cannot. But
Right.
yeah, and apologies to those poor brainworms because nobody deserves that fate in life, not even those parasites. But
Poor brainworms.
poor
Yeah.
brainworms. But it is this Greenland, Panama, Canada nonsense. It's so many things because you're going to have, and invariably we will have and do have the camp that says, a la Ben Meiselas, this is just distraction so that Donald Trump, who's I don't believe ever playing 4D chess, but so that Donald Trump can distract you from the fact that they're not going to do anything to lower the price of groceries, that they're not going to actually stop, the tech jobs from going to the immigrants, that they're actually, they are going to take away your Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, all the things. They're going to enact all the policies in 2020, right. Project 2025 outlined, whatever. And yes, I do think there's a component of truth to that. I'm not going to deny that a lot of this stuff that is getting our attention is to distract us. There's also the fact that he's insane, and the shiny object in the room that gets his attention in that moment gets his attention. And then I will take it one further by saying that there is not small chance that there's a larger than small chance that there is a Putin component to all of this as well, because you can look at the tactical reasons for why Greenland would be something that Putin would very much like in the hands, or largely in the hands of his tinkle tape trader, whether allegedly, and Canada too, obviously. The Panama Canal, that's speculative, but there's lots of weird stuff about that too. And there's the case that's going on down there that does not relate to Putin, but that is related to Donald Trump's businesses and corruption. And we know he'll use the White House for whatever ends he feels will benefit himself or his buddies. So there's all of that, right? Because it is, but at the end of the day, it's fucking lunacy. It is still lunacy. The cover of the Post, I think they may have deleted it or whatever, was the Don Roe Doctrine, where we rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. We rename Greenland our land. What else? Oh my God. But
our land? Is that what really is being proposed? Renaming it our land?
Do you remember? Yeah, here it is. Oh yes, our land. And I apologize. It's not the Panama Canal. It would be the Panamaga Canal.
Oh God.
And
oh my God.
So remember Sharpie Gate? Remember when, so he did obviously we know the hurricane thing.
Yes, with the
Remember the
hurricane. Yeah.
ensuing hysterical, like amazing trend where everyone was drawing Sharpies to make him look taller than Obama or to
Hmm.
make him look whatever. We are living in that reality right now. We are
Yeah.
Sharpie Gate. We're inside it.
Yeah, exactly. It's this ridiculous idea of expansionism at this period of time with a guy who has been repeatedly referred to as Donald the Dove, and now threatening military action to seize territory that we don't need and that no one asked for. This is the kind of stuff. And I wonder, Joe, if anyone really cares outside of those of us who follow politics, who cover politics. I wonder if this stuff really ultimately matters anymore to just regular voters who, many of which stupidly walked into a voting booth or voted early this past fall because of fill in the blank, people saying he, him, and their profiles on social media, or gas prices, or the price of eggs, whatever the justification was. I wonder if that's the only thing that really matters. I wonder if we've become so selfish as a society that just guarding, the prices that we have to pay and making sure that we can bash trans people freely on social media or whatever the justification is. Anything else beyond that just doesn't matter to us anymore. That, yes, we can start off on this adventurism in Panama or try to annex Canada for some reason, despite the fact that Canada, if it became a series of American states, would most likely tip the Electoral College to the Democrats in perpetuity.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the realities that Donald hasn't even really addressed that at all, knowing that, I mean, certainly there would be areas of Canada that would vote Republican, but not in the kind of numbers that would make any difference.
Right.
Certainly, it would be advantageous to Democrats. So the bottom line here is exactly what you were saying about Ben and so on, that this is a gigantic distraction. And I've been, as I say that, I kind of bristle at that notion too, because I do feel to a certain extent we have to at least keep like one eye on what Donald Trump is saying, while most of our focus has to be on what he's doing,
Yeah.
because what he says sometimes precedes things that he actually tries to do. So we
Hmm.
have to kind of discern what's important to pay attention to and what's not. But there is going to be, I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice as the opposition slash resistance or whatever we're going to call ourselves this time around to
Drunk.
spend too much time chasing down, swatting down all the ridiculousness that he blurts in these public appearances. Because, and just from a basic sanity slash anxiety point of view,
Yeah.
I think to maintain our ability to provide some sort of checks on his power, some kind of watchdogging to what the administration does, we do have to maintain our sanity in
Yeah.
this and not just go, I mean, literally bananas. I mean, I said on my show yesterday, I've already started seeing a therapist to deal with, just raging anxiety and other
Mm.
issues that I have, but that's a different story.
Fine.
But I mean, just sitting here looking at the macro ramifications of another Donald Trump presidency, what's going to happen in the United States, what's going to happen internationally, plus what's going to happen to us personally.
Yeah.
Are we going to be subject to this Russia style oligarchy where they just pillage whatever money the Russian people have for their own enrichment? Are we going to face that? Are we going to face IRS audits? Are we going to face legal retribution and so on? And we're all on different rungs of the ladder, and we're all on different levels of susceptibility to that. But is that going to be a thing too? Am I being irrational when I get concerned about those things, or am I being overly anxious? But we got to keep an eye on all this stuff. And I think to something I was just mentioning about the macro issues. I was talking on Stephanie's show, once again, Stephanie Miller's show this morning, about the delicate balance that the international community requires, the very narrow thread that holds things together without collapsing into international chaos. Donald Trump is this 90-foot diapered baby just barreling his way through like Godzilla, crushing whatever he sees. Oh, that building, I'm gonna knock that down, and bam, I'm gonna knock that thing down, knock that thing down. Just crushing everything in his path. And the disruption that that will create to this international balance that is so precarious. That's one of the things that, wakes me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, okay, what if he does decide to invade Greenland, and the EU pushes back against that? And well, where does that all lead? And I try not to go down that road where I say, well, then this happens, and then this domino falls, and then that thing happens, and that retaliation. And then suddenly we're seeing mushroom clouds, and it's utterly terrifying.
Yeah.
So can we go back to talking about Chekhov and space worms and
yeah,
yeah.
That was preferable. That was the Barbie movie compared to what we're really talking
sorry,
about.
It got dark there. Really bleak. Yeah.
No, look, let's be real though. Like again, part of the reason that part of what I said to Ben Meiselas this morning on Twitter
Yeah.
when he said this is just a distraction was, yes, you're right, but I still think we have to make jokes about it because I think we have
Yeah.
to. That's the thing, right? Like there's so many things to unpack about what you said, but at the end of the day, I keep going back to it, and I hate the expression, but it makes sense and it works in this context that we do have to walk and chew gum at the same time, right? Like when it comes to Donald Trump, yes, we have to take him both literally and comically and also frighteningly and with great trepidation and anxiety. Like it's all true, but what he does is often just throws a whole bunch of flood the zone with shit, right? Throw all the pasta at the wall and just see, or the ketchup or whatever it is, and see what sticks.
Ketchup, yes.
Right, exactly. Whatever you choose. But and sometimes what that is him prepping the ground like a cat. Like when those cats do that thing, you probably know the word for it. I don't know.
Yeah, they make biscuits. Yeah, they're making biscuits.
Right?
Yeah.
So like he's like making little like autocratic biscuits, It's like here's a crazy biscuit. I'm just gonna prep America for this crazy biscuit over here. And
that's a great name, by the way, if you're going to change the name of the podcast, autocratic biscuits, I think would be a perfect name for the show. Yeah.
That is brilliant because it's like what Dadaism or whatever, where it's like no one would understand it, what it means or why. And why did she name it autocratic biscuits? Why not? Why not? Because she's bucking the system. That's why. It's a statement. I'm a Dadaist now. That's me, Jojo the Dadaist. That's another name possibly.
There you go. It's another name. See,
Jojo.
We're just idea people today.
Jojo the Biscuit Dadaist. It's like it's a cooking show slash. But to the point though, like sometimes that is what he's doing, right? So often what he's doing is he's bringing the country along with whatever crazy notion it is, and some part of this is probably that where it's like you said, going right way back to the beginning of what you were talking about, how so much of America just doesn't really care. And they don't care. They've tuned out. They just want somebody who's going to come in and do something different, just somebody who's going to break things. They're done with like the tradition. They don't even know what that means, right? Because when you put the policies in front of them and you don't put the candidates in front of them, they vote for the policies. They do it 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times on every ballot measure they've been proposed. But when you put somebody like Donald Trump or Joe Biden or Kamala Harris in front of them, then it's about the people. So then they're like, I just want somebody who does something different. And then they pick the idiot who is a traitor and a rapist and all the things because they're like, he looks, he doesn't follow the traditional whatever. No, he's a terrible person who wants to do terrible things to this country and will get away with whatever he can. And so like, I think some of this stupid shit with Greenland and Panama and Canada is a little bit of that biscuit making, right? So there is something to that. He didn't come up with this out of nowhere, right? And someone has already mentioned this to him. He said, Charlie Kirk or somebody mentioned this to him, Lord, whoever. Someone has said this, but I also think there's a Putin component again, like I said. So what he's doing is he's trying to like float these test balloons out there, but also moving those chains so that people are like, oh, by the time it happens, like they're already prepped for this, but they're on to outrage number 422 of the day, so that stuff is like not even crazy anymore. Because now we're talking about him coming after you or me or whatever, having firing squad executions, which is something he actually did propose. Whatever craziness there is. So there's some strategy to it, but it's also he is insane and he will do whatever makes him happy or whatever. And this is nonsense, but naming the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, and Panama. Let me ask you this. When's the last time in your life, like honestly, in your just daily existence, the Panama Canal even came up, right? Like even just in
Yeah,
passing. Right? This is not something a
yeah.
topic of conversation. Now MAG is like, okay, well, we wanted eggs lowered, we said. We said we wanted the immigrants deported and not to take our jobs. We said we wanted to keep our Social Security, health care, Medicaid. We didn't understand that Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act were the same thing. Whoops.
Mhm.
But I guess, okay, yeah, let's take our canal back. That's what we should do. What?
Yeah.
Right.
Just
No.
absolutely absurd. Again, no one's asking for that. There is no crisis with the canal. We're not being denied access for our shipping or military or what have you. And, buried in and amongst all of the nonsense from Donald Trump's press conference yesterday was I believe it was a Fox News hit that Tommy Tuberville did, where he was talking about, they asked him about the Panama Canal. Well, suddenly this is a thing. I can't believe it's like building a bridge to 1978. And it's like the Teddy Roosevelt administration. It's
Oh,
ridiculous.
don't you
But
mean what was his name? What did she say on that Fox? Not Teddy Roosevelt. You mean wait, you mean Harry Truman? Just joking.
oh, it's Harry Truman.
Wasn't
Yeah.
Harry Truman the president in 1867? Did you see that clip?
Oh no, I didn't see that. What
We'll
is
stick a pin in
that?
that. We'll stick a pin in that
Okay.
because
All right.
well, so you have to stick a pin in that because it's the idiocracy. But we'll go back to the bridge. Yeah, we're going back to the 70s, right? Now we're
Yeah,
talking about the
right.
Panama Canal.
Yeah. Well, this is what Jimmy Carter gave the Panama Canal back to Panama. It
Right.
was a good decision. But the fact of the matter is that Tommy Tuberville was saying that we need full access to the Panama Canal, because if suddenly Panama decides to block our access to the canal, and then we have to go to war against China because China has invaded Taiwan, how are we going to get our military? How are we going to get our Navy ships there through to the Pacific Ocean to get over to fight China? And there are
Wow.
so many. This is a sitting member of Congress, this
Senator.
elite club of 535 Americans tasked with creating laws for the American people, between the House, 435 members, the Senate, 100 members. And this guy's talking about some sort of nonsense about how do we get our military from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean in time to fight China, which should otherwise be the headline in that statement. Why are we fighting over Taiwan? Why is China suddenly invading Taiwan? What kind of disaster went on with Donald Trump bungling that to allow? Anyway, so there are so many problems with that, including the fact that we do have a Pacific fleet. I mean, there are,
There's that. There's that.
there is military that exists in the Pacific
Yeah.
that we could engage. And so there's just so much wrong with that. And the basic idea of it being completely unnecessary is I think the top line of all the things that are wrong. It's again, why suddenly do we feel as though we need to annex Canada? Why? Good Lord. And he's not even president yet. And my blood pressure is
Mm.
is peaking over all of this.
Yeah,
So
there's a meme
yeah,
of like, is America great yet? Because I just feel embarrassed at this point. And he's not
yeah.
even president, and I'm perpetually embarrassed. I mean, it's like,
Mhm.
and that press conference was completely unhinged yesterday. He was talking about itchy heaters and the windmills making the
Oh
whales
yeah,
crazy,
yeah.
and it's like of all the things, we. I guess I prepared somewhat emotionally for the evil and the autocracy and
Mhm.
the fascist component of all of this, but it's the stupid that I'm
Yeah,
like, no, please, can we not go back to the stupid? Because the
yeah.
stupid, yes, you have to laugh at it, but you're just like, you can't. Like again, the Fox host last night was talking about the Panama Canal, and she's somebody from my local Fox, but she was on the Fox Big Fox, and she said back in 1867, Democratic President Harry Truman tried to buy Greenland, and no
Oh,
one, Pop, no one checked her on
yeah.
this.
I
And
mean,
it was in her notes. She looked at her notes and said those words out loud. And I'm just like, and to your point again, nobody cares. So the people at home are like, 1867, Truman, doesn't sound right. Okay.
yeah. I'm positive that if Donald Trump were president right now, he'd be calling for spreading Brondo on the wildfires in Southern California. This is the place we're in now. It's so easy to see the trajectory of where we are now to that Mike Judge movie. And I once got scolded in 2016 as I was covering the election for Salon.com. I once got scolded by my editor for invoking idiocracy too often in my writing. And I said, well, what else am I supposed to call it? It's certainly an appropriate metaphor for what we're experiencing, what we could face. And now here we are with everything we've talked about so far regarding Donald Trump. And there's so much more to come that literally seems like the portend of what's also defined as kakistocracy. I guess that's the elite liberal word that we're using for idiocracy, when I think idiocracy is so much more familiar and so much easier to spread around and for people to latch onto. But that's just me. But that's really what we're genuinely facing with this breakdown, this dumbing down of America, this proud dumb fuckery that I think is being marketed as somehow culturally appropriate. Like, okay, well, there's so many people are just dummies. And so I guess we've got to all be dummies to make the dummies feel better about being dummies.
Yeah, it's my right to be a dummy. I'm liberated because I get to be stupid now. Hey, yay me. Like, yeah.
And all these corporations now pandering to the dummies.
I was just going to ask about that. Yeah. Let's talk about that. So when you're talking about the, obey in advance, I called them obeta cucks a minute ago because I can. And let's talk about these, and I will call them beta cucks. Meta now. Zuckerberg is kissing the ring. Shocker, because he has decided that they're not going to fact check anymore, and they're moving something to Texas, right? They're moving some component of their something like Elon did to Texas. So I don't even understand that, but I understand, I guess, a little bit about why. But so this has been an ongoing thing. We saw, obviously, before the election, even we saw the Washington Post and the LA Times, obeying in advance by not endorsing the sane, rational, reasonable candidate over the, traitorous rapist. But Bezos has taken things, like Bezos does, to a whole nother level, because I guess Bezos just doesn't do anything small except maybe for what's in his pants. And he has.
You know something I don't know?
Well, I mean, I'm just guessing.
Assuming, yeah.
But yeah, I would. God, there goes lunch. But
me too.
Sorry. I don't care how much money you have. Nope. Nope. But so Bezos had a very famous, very talented, incredible political cartoonist and Telenus. I don't know if that's how you say her name. Telenus. Yeah. She wasn't allowed to publish a cartoon that featured, not because Bezos necessarily explicitly, but like because the editorial board wouldn't let her publish a cartoon that it didn't depict him in the best light of, kneeling, kowtowing to, the melon-hued moron. So that's a thing. So obviously Washington Post, yet again, obeying in advance. Who else? George Stephanopoulos, ABC, etc. We're seeing this all over the place, right? We're seeing this sort of, they're almost not just giving up. They're lining up. They're giving up and lining up for a fascist, and it's terrifying. And it's what Tim Snyder so often says is rule number one that you don't do if you don't want to slide into autocracy. And here we are looking at it in real time. They're not resisting even the littlest bit. Neither is the media. The mainstream media isn't either.
Yeah. They're behaving as though Donald Trump won by 10 million votes and was a sort of LBJ style electoral landslide. And obviously it wasn't. It was an extraordinarily narrow victory for Donald Trump, in which he didn't even break 50%. So that's not to downplay the tragedy of the election, but it certainly wasn't a mandate requiring all kinds of adjustments culturally in terms of social media and censorship or not censorship. I mean, when it comes to Mark Zuckerberg, famously, you can get suspended on Facebook for using the phrase white trash.
Really?
Yeah. And I know people who have been suspended for using that phrase. And certainly there's something to be said about what that phrase actually means and what it could imply, and maybe it's not a good idea to use it, but that's one of the rules on Facebook. And suddenly now you can just blurt whatever disinformation you want. It's a far cry from where we were at this period of time after the 2016 election, where the social media platforms were running scared, and rightfully so, after helping Donald Trump win by platforming disinformation about Hillary Clinton, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and the fallout surrounding that, and what happened as a consequence of it, which was the deplatforming of a lot of, and this is specific to Facebook, just from what I recall, a lot of deplatforming of political pages, and people getting booted off their entire Facebook presence being canceled because Facebook wanted to move away from politics and get out of that game after having taken rubles to platform Russian disinformation.
Right.
And now here we are where Zuckerberg thinks, okay, you know, it's a good idea. That thing that Elon Musk is doing, that looks so successful. So let's try the same kind of thing. Let's just engage in this kind of fuckery with the platform. And what's remarkable about it is, my joke aside, it's working out horribly for Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Twitter is collapsing in terms of its user base, in terms of its daily users, in terms of its value as an investment for he and his investors. So it doesn't make any sense to kind of to go down that road. And I kind of saw hints of that prior to the election, maybe whenever it was last year, 2023, I think it was, where Meta decided to start selling the verified blue check badges as a
Yes.
subscription
Yep.
service, both
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram and Facebook, et cetera. And that was in pursuit of what Elon Musk had done with the blue checks on Twitter. And so it seems ludicrous from just a basic business point of view to follow Elon Musk's lead.
Right.
But once again, this is about, I think, Mark Zuckerberg deciding to pander to a certain cultural thing that he perceives happening inside the United States. The MAGA movement, whatever you want to call it, the anti-woke movement, which is just utterly ridiculous. And so here we face this kind of platforming of disinformation that will further fuel support for Donald Trump's agenda. And so that's what makes our job so important, to push back against this stuff. Suddenly, I think if there is some sort of upside, I think the rise of independent media pushing back against Donald Trump, the rise of independent uses of these platforms to do whatever we can to break through these firewalls that are being put up by Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and some of the others. And we have to rise to that occasion. I think now we've all had a chance to grieve for the consequences of the election, and it's time to get up off the bench and do the hard work.
Yeah, 1,000 trillion% to all of that. And it's
Yeah.
interesting too, because it's not a mandate, because he did not get a majority, he got a plurality, and because it was really a couple 100,000 votes in a few, well, obviously crucial states,
Yeah.
what is left in the wake of it is a whole lot of us in this country right now who are like looking around going, oh, fuck this. No. What the hell? And then looking at Musk, I mean, looking not even at Musk anymore, but looking at Zuckerberg and Bezos and other people and ABC and even Stephanopoulos, who's definitely toned it back, or CNN at this point, which is basically the Jerry Springer show. And they're going, why are you doing this? Why are
Yeah.
you doing this? There's still a whole bunch of us out here. Like, I'm not insane.
Mhm.
Why are you complying? Why are you just like yielding to this? This is not the movement that has a hold of the whole country. This
Yeah.
is a move. It's not even whatever it is. It can be thwarted by us, but you've already given up. So it's like that really does put so much more emphasis and onus upon those of us who are not beholden to what mega universe of whoever owns all these legacy media channels, etc.,
Mhm.
because we are still independent and we're still out there talking to the people that are not online with this, are not on board with this. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of us. So why would we just be like, okay, I give up?
One thing I was thinking about, Joe, is trying to put myself in the mindset of some of the people who have joined this conga line of capitulation,
Oh, I'm stealing that.
disobeying in advance and so forth. And I wonder if there's something going on. And this is not necessarily an idea that I agree with. It's just I'm trying to think how these people are justifying just the unbridled ass kissing of Donald Trump for no reason whatsoever, other than maybe he won the election by the skin of his fake teeth. I don't know, but I was thinking that perhaps they may be employing what many world leaders employ when it comes to dealing with Donald Trump, pretending to be his pal in order to manipulate him, in order to massage his ego, to think that, oh, all these people are very good people, very fine people, because they're my friends, and they were very kind, they were very good to Trump, and however he thinks about the people who are close to him and in his inner circle and so on, whether it's Vladimir Putin or it's like I always think of Macron.
Hmm.
Like with a big grin on his face, shaking Donald's hand and, sort of just glad handing him. And
Hmm.
obviously, when he stops shaking hands with Donald Trump and goes away, and Donald Trump goes his way back to his airplane, and probably going, well, this guy's a phenomenal idiot, but maybe
Hmm.
the best way to guide him toward what we need him to do, we just pretend to be his friend,
Hmm.
and because Donald is really preoccupied with who likes him and who's been very good to him or who's been very, very unfair to him. And I think maybe that looking back at his first term and seeing the degree of opposition and extrapolating out, well, maybe that didn't work out so well because now he's been reelected, after a 4-year break. Maybe this time around we try to be his pal or pretend to be his pal, see how that's going to work out. And so maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's all like a lobbying effort. I wonder that, and maybe not necessarily with Elon, but if you were to apply this theory to Elon Musk, he's facing the prospect that Donald Trump is going to roll back all of Joe Biden's mandates for switching over to electric vehicles. I think by, I want to say 2035
2030.
is when,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, 2035.
Yeah, it's somewhere in there in
Yeah.
that range. And Elon Musk would lose a fortune
Hmm.
if suddenly there was no mandate to buy Tesla vehicles. And what we saw in 2024, the numbers are out, and Tesla sales dropped significantly in 2024. So if Elon Musk is still sane, and there's a big question mark around that, whether he's just completely lost his marbles, but if he's still somewhat tethered to his businesses as far as making them successful, you'd think he'd want to kind of manipulate Donald Trump into backing off the overturning of some of these mandates for electric vehicles.
Hmm.
And the best way to do that is to pretend to be Donald Trump's friend, to be in his inner circle and to just be there to kind of nudge him in the right direction. I don't know. It's not, again, I want to be clear. This is not what I think is actually happening,
It's
but
possible.
it's a possibility for why there's this level of, as opposed to last time around, this level of just ass kissing going on with Trump.
Yeah, it really does feel very different in that way because you remember those videos that went really viral when Trump was elected in 2016, where every
Yeah.
country has had a video like it was like Greece wants to respond to Donald Trump, or like every country had a different, but they were very funny. And the world leaders were kind of like very much bristling, like they thought maybe it was a one-off, we'd really effed up, and like we'll
Yeah.
be like this is not really serious, and they can laugh at him in public, etc. But it's a second time makes that calculation a little bit different, right?
Hmm.
Obviously. But there's also this, to me, there's this idea that even like, I think what it's self-preservation, obviously, especially with the legacy media, ABC, for instance, like
Hmm.
they probably think that the calculus is, if we play nice and
Yeah.
roll over a little bit, he won't come after us and revoke our licenses and things he really can't do.
Yeah.
But at the same
Mhm.
time, the calculus is wrong
Yeah.
because if the people who surround him this time, which is very different again from the sort of adults in the room that were there before, people who
Mhm.
are surrounding him right now, they have really, really dark agendas. They
Yeah.
have fascistic agendas. They
Mhm.
they have very clear Project 2025, etc. They have very clear ideas for what they want to do. And ABC just rolling over to appease Donald Trump in this moment ultimately won't win the day when these, fascistic people around Trump get their way, which is that ABC won't exist other than if it's state media. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That's the thing that like no one's really thinking. Like you can't just appease him to exist. There is a real risk to you just not existing anymore, no matter what you do. So
Yeah.
why not use this time now instead of doing that to resist, to be Costco, right? To say like, no, I'm not going to yield. We are going to continue to do what we have done and upheld. And again, Christopher Wray is another example.
Mhm.
Why not just stand your ground and force them to come at you? Because then you have at least integrity, and you're gonna go if you're gonna go down anyway, which is very
Mhm.
likely if he really gets what he wants done, or well, the people around him do, because he doesn't really that care that much. He just wants to talk about windmills and fucking itchy heaters. But
And
I
by the way,
just
just real quick, I want to interrupt
yeah
real quick.
yeah
Has anyone ever noticed that oil-based heat is more humid than electric-based heat? I don't
so
think
weird.
anyone's ever observed that. I think that's just nonsense. It's
This
just
is
making that up as he goes. Yeah.
but you know it implanted somewhere. This dude in plumbing, some was he assaulted by a plumber? Like did he fall into a toilet? Like was he
Yeah.
abandoned in like a basement with like steamy pipes and shit? Like there's some weirdness with him in plumbing. Like that guy's got
Yeah.
issues
Yeah.
with plumbing because like
Right, right.
I
Well,
couldn't even
if you got that hair of his, but when it's not, it's not dairy swirled on the top of his head,
right
you
right
got to imagine it hanging down like 9 feet long.
six
And
hairs.
yeah, and so and then maybe once a week he's got to wash that mop of cotton candy or whatever Penn Jillette called it. And so that requires some sort of water pressure to get all of the gunk out of it, the gunk that he uses to secure it. And so that's why he's so obsessed with, and that's my theory as to why he's so obsessed with water pressure. But the heat thing is just ridiculous. And the only thing I can imagine is because he got all those that gigantic donation from Big Oil and promised to be favorable to Big Oil, as though that was ever going to be a question. But yeah, I think that may be it. Yeah, we want to use oil-based heat because yeah, obviously I got a lot of money from the
Yeah.
oil companies in the election.
Yeah, but it's itchy. Like I was
It's
just like, really,
itchy.
you
Yeah.
know what, and maybe what he was conflating here, because like when I was, when you're a kid and you go out and you play in the snow forever, and then you come inside and it's warm inside, you've been freezing outside, you come inside, you
Yeah.
start taking stuff off, and then you're like, the hell, like you're just like, my whole body itches. Where I'm
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah. I know what you mean because what happens is when it's cold outside,
yeah,
I take longer showers.
okay,
So I'm standing in the shower for 20 minutes,
yeah,
and that creates just dry skin, and so
yeah,
you itch a little bit after you've had a
yeah,
long
yeah.
hot shower, and maybe that, and maybe he's thinking that I don't know.
I
He's
mean,
conflating things.
right,
Yeah,
like you're going and trying to occupy his cranium is about as effective as being one of those Chekhov worms, but like or
right.
desirable for that matter. Well, you can't
Yeah,
really, yeah. It's funny to try and make sense of what he's saying as if there's any reason or rationality to it, but it's like, what's
Mm.
the origin story? But then it's like he was talking about Hannibal Lecter for an entire election cycle, and nobody seemed to give a shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, but let's jump subjects if we can, because this one is very concerning to me at the moment. He's supposed to be sentenced. Our felon elect is supposed to be sentenced for the
Hmm.
34 felony convictions in the election interference, aka hush money case, on the 10th, 10 days before his
Hmm.
inauguration, which is insane. Where he'll be in a building he incited an attack against, but whatever. And today he had his lawyers petition the Supreme Court to intervene in his sentencing because this is the transition, which they would like very much to have considered also the presidency, which because of an OLC memo, it would end the Supreme Court's immunity decision preclude anyone from being able to sentence him, which is the final stage you really have to be considered a convicted felon. It's not closed yet because he's still waiting for a sentencing. So they're asking the Supreme Court, the Christo-fascist wing of the Supreme Court of the United States, to intervene and pause the sentencing, that it will not result in any prison time. And Judge Merchan's already said that, so that he does not go into office as a fully convicted felon. And that's the appeals court in New York has already said, no, we're not going to do that. So he's like, well, I'll just go to my buddies on the Supreme Court. The fun fact also, Sonia Sotomayor, if we went literally with each district and who the corresponding Supreme Court justice is, which they do in these cases, but not in this one, of course, she would be the deciding factor as to whether or not they would even hear this. So I think as of this moment, we're still waiting to hear if they'll even respond, if they'll hear it, if they do hear it, and they actually do intervene. Well, that's all sorts of effed up, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm going to take the optimistic view on this. I don't think the Supreme Court's going to take up this case because you're talking about a local prosecution, New York City, and it's obviously he's already been convicted. There's always great deference to jury trials where a jury has made up its mind, and
Yeah.
there's no real indication that there's going to be any kind of harsh sentence that's going to come out of this. I just think that Judge Merchan will either suspend the sentence in some way or maybe fine Donald, but there's not going to be any prison. There's not going to be any
No.
sort of house arrest or anything like that. That's never going to happen. And so it's just much ado about nothing when it comes to this. This is just Donald Trump with his slush fund, the Save America PAC slush fund. He's got an endless stream of a geyser of cash to spend on his legal defense, and this is just him using it and doing everything he can because part of his brand is being a fighter and never acquiescing. The whole Roy Cohn, one of Roy Cohn's rules that he injected in Donald Trump's brain, like the Chekhov brainworm, and so. So I don't think the Supreme Court is going to block this. I think this is going to move forward, but it's ultimately not going to have any bearing on Donald Trump's life. It's just going to be one of those things where, yeah, we can say that Donald Trump was a convicted and sentenced felon, 34 felony counts, hush money and trying to it was ultimately an election interference case,
Right.
because he was trying to manipulate the perception of himself using his own money, and then the campaign finance factors in there too. So, but again, going back to what we were saying before, Joe, I don't even know if people give a shit. It's just like, it's one of those things where we got to do these things. And it goes to, now that I think of it, it makes me think of what happened on Monday with the certification of the election. I would have loved to have seen at least one Democrat. Why didn't we have at least one Democrat object to the certification? And it didn't even need to be based on any sort of allegations of rigging or election irregularities or voter suppression or the bomb threats that were called in, those sort of the things that we can name off the tops of our heads. But I mean, they could have objected just simply based on the 14th Amendment alone and the Colorado Supreme Court's decision about how he's ineligible to be president because of the insurrection and his participation in that based on the 14th Amendment. And so at least I wish we could have had that. But that's, again, we can categorize that into the conga line of capitulation. And I think to an extent as well, and now I'm really getting off on a tangent, that Donald Trump with the big lie and what happened at the end of 2020 into 2021, leading to the insurrection and the fallout after all of that, it also boxed in the Democrats.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's mania when it came to the 2020 election forced Democrats to further, frame themselves as the adults in the room. Because Donald did that, and we don't want to be like Donald, we have to say this. We have to say that we believe in the peaceful transfer of power, which is good. It's noble, and that's fine. We're the grown-ups. I get it.
Yeah.
But we're now, it's forcing our hand. His insanity is forcing our hand to not take any action whatsoever because we need to we need to frame ourselves as the grown-ups, as the people who adhere to democracy and the peaceful transfer of power. No, we're not going to object to the certification because Donald Trump tried to do that. 147 Republicans objected to the certification of the 2020 election, but we're not going to be like them.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to say a goddamn thing about this, even though there are obvious grounds to do that. The 14th Amendment is a real thing. And now we're making the US Constitution and the application of that particular amendment optional. It's now like, well, you can obey the Constitution, but if it creates some form of insanity in Congress, never mind. We're going to waive that. We're going to waive that part of the Constitution now.
Right.
And
Because we don't want to look bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to look like we look like them. Right.
Yeah,
And that's
exactly.
the other thing too. This is what happens all the time, Bob, and it drives me absolutely insane. They set the narrative. They say this is what the Democrats are doing, and this is what the Democrats aren't doing. And even if it's true or not true, then all of a sudden we're like, well, hold on. Let's play within the confines, the construct of their narrative about us, and then let's defend that position. And then really what we're doing is just confirming that that's the narrative and it's set by them. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. No, we don't always have to be like, we don't have to take the high road. We don't have to be the good guys. We don't have to always it's mind-boggling because here we were defending being the grown-ups in the room by, following the tradition, the oath of office is blah, 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 the Constitution to the letter, while knowing that they're doing all of that while certifying the election of someone they know would very much like to not do any of that and tried to break all of that the last time. And yet it was this elephant in the room that was like it didn't even exist. Like it was the Democrats didn't even really they said they didn't really frame it that way in the moment. The news media certainly didn't. They kept saying this certification, unlike the last one, was without incident. The way I describe it is like it makes it sound like my sister and I didn't get into a fight at a family reunion because I stole her clothes when we were teenagers. Like that's without incident. Like what else did they say? I have it here. There was another thing that they said that was driving me nuts. Oh, it was markedly different. This certification was markedly different from the last one, when the last one was the Battle of the Bastards. Okay, like why are we talking like and that sort of like again, it confirms such a weird narrative that the Democrats just won't do whatever is necessary because they're not going to break democracy. But that's not breaking democracy, to your point. If you say, well, the 14th Amendment was very clear here. We have no doubt that this person engaged in an insurrection. But that didn't go to trial. Because justice is broken in this country and he is apparently above the law, but still at least bring it up, at least refer to it, at least like it goes right back to this thing with the Washington Post and with Zuckerberg and with ABC. It's the same kind of obeyance in advance in a different way. Like when Trump was in the White House with Joe Biden, who I never criticize. Everyone criticizes me for being a cultist, Joe Biden, Kool-Aid drinker, and it's true. I love the man to a fault. I do. But when Trump was there and they're sitting in front of the comically raging fire, like I was like, is he going to burn him? That was crazy. Yeah, maybe he's trying to melt him. But the smiling and the handshaking and the embracing and the dude, you have been telling us what you know to be true, that this is a dictator on day one, guy. And you're like, welcome. Do you want to see where my favorite toys are? Like, what? No, but all of it is to this. It's all part of that same capitulation in advance, the capitulation conga line I'm stealing from you, and I'm going to credit you, I promise, just one time. And but it is, and this is what we saw in Congress from our own electeds, who I admire, I do, was a sort of weird, we're going to show them we're the adults in the room by just kind of rolling over and doing what we're supposed to do, but that's not enough in this moment. Extraordinary times do call for extraordinary measures, and I don't want you to break democracy, even though I wouldn't hate it, but still at least say something.
Yeah, exactly. Just one Democrat objecting to get it on the congressional record.
Yeah, as long as they exist.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we didn't even get that. It's really disconcerting. Look, I have empathy. I have lots of empathy for self-preservation, for people making decisions based on not wanting to be relentlessly prosecuted by Donald Trump, legally harassed. I mean, we know what he does, even if, none of these cases are going to go through, whether it's Liz Cheney or anyone else. None of this is going to actually go to a trial. It's the whole idea is punishment by litigation. It's
Mm-hmm.
punishment by legal fees. Donald Trump will have the entire weight of the Justice Department to fund these kinds of legitimate witch hunts, and and then whoever's defending themselves will have to, spend their own money or whatever, get money from someone else, however this works, to defend themselves against this frivolous prosecution or series
Mm-hmm.
of prosecutions. And that's ultimately the punishment here. It's not any realistic jail term, and this is never going to happen. Liz
Mm-hmm.
Cheney's never going to go to prison for this. Adam Kinzinger's never going to go to prison for this. None of the January 6th committee is ever going to go to prison for this sort of thing, but they may have a chunk taken out of their personal fortunes
Yeah.
in defending themselves, and that's
Yeah.
what will delight Donald Trump. Plus it embosses his brand as being,
A fighter.
this fake alpha manly man who, just never takes no for an answer, and just
Yeah.
destroys it or tries to destroy his enemies.
Right.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
that's, I think, the point.
I think he'll try, though. I do think he'll try to go after them in some way. I think
Yeah.
that what he did, like with Andy McCabe, and then we learned that, he did have Bill Barr try to go after Hillary, et cetera.
Mhm.
And what he did, obviously, with Michael Cohen, et cetera. But what he did with McCabe and Comey and using the IRS, well, I think he will
Yeah.
try those things to use whatever mechanisms are at his fingertips that he thinks he can, because he's a little petulant baby, and he'll be like, "What can I use? What's in my arsenal? Like, can I nuke
Yep.
their houses? Like that kind of stuff." I do think he will do that, or at least try. And I don't think there's a lot of people in the room who are going to be like, "No, you can't do that," because he's going to be like, "Sure, yeah, let's try that." But the
Mhm.
other part that really scares me, and just last thing, I think we saw this, obviously, to the tragedy of what happened in New Orleans.
Oh yeah.
My heart goes out to, I'm sure you feel the same way. This is
What a
really
horror show.
horrible,
Yeah.
horrible, 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 and heartbreaking. All of the things. And but connects in conjunction with the Tesla weird explosion suicide thing. Um, what happened there, as you know well, and what most people know well, a lot of people know, not a lot of people, some people don't, because there was this sustained disinformation uh, push coming from not only Donald Trump, but like the pervasively from the right, et cetera, where they were, even though we learned pretty early that neither one of these cases were foreign born terrorists, they were both American citizens, both
Yep.
one former, one current, one active military, right? Even though we had those facts, we had sets of facts that we didn't know initially or immediately, but eventually and quickly, fairly quickly, it was
Mhm.
never retracted by Trump. It was blamed on the border, which is a border of Texas. No, but
Yeah.
they didn't abandon it because they very much needed that narrative. And so here we are looking again at the felon elect coming into office, someone who will gladly traffic in full on lies, so
Yeah.
long as they serve some end, and that end is obviously to continue to stoke the xenophobia related to, immigrants and people who weren't born here, et cetera, which serves them all except for Elon and the tech bros. But like this disinformation thing that's coming back, which we had, we did deal with in 2016,
Mhm.
at the top, well, obviously dealt with COVID. Arguably, you could say hundreds of thousands of Americans would not be dead today if we had someone at the helm who was not trafficking in dis and misinformation, and
Yeah.
also just completely disinterested. But we saw disinformation with vaccines, all of the things. So that's coming back into office, and it's more emboldened than ever. And I know people who have said since the attack in New Orleans in particular, that they have said since that it was a terrorist from another country that came in illegally. And it's like,
Yep.
but there's facts, but the facts don't matter, because they're like,
Right.
well, those are your facts. And it's, whoa, now we have separate sets of facts. We have alternative facts.
Mhm.
But this is the degradation that kind of thing has on society when you couple it with what Zuckerberg and Musk are allowing on their platforms to run rampant, which is go ahead, lie with impunity. I don't care. If I don't like you, I'm going to take your check away. But like, this is terrifying. And this
Yeah.
makes, again, what we do, what people in our space do, even more important than ever.
God, I couldn't agree with you more. It's the Ouroboros of bullshit that we're facing here. So what happens is Donald Trump and Donald Trump adjacent people, whether it's the social media algorithms or whoever pumping disinformation into the minds of susceptible Americans. And then they just, and it's no wonder that people end up going nuts and doing things like this, whether it was what happened in New Orleans or Las Vegas or the mass shooters that we see, the guy who took a shot at Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. Um, this is all a result of, I think, this endless geyser of disinformation and the inability of so many of us to be able to discern, especially online, the difference between right and wrong and fact and fiction. And so consequently, we see all of these things, all of these tragedies where people lash out. And then Donald Trump lies about what happened, creating more disinformation that then further people can't digest adequately, and then creating more angst and rage and acting out and terrorism and so forth, which then gets lied about again, and then the cycle goes around and around and around.
Yeah.
And going to what you were saying at the end there, yeah, we have such an important responsibility to get the truth out there now more than any other time in my lifetime, because so many platforms that we relied on to be truthful and to right the ship, right the national mood, has gone bye-bye, and we can't necessarily rely on the same sources that we could. Now, certainly, there are many, many sources in the mainstream press that are still reliable, that are still doing the good reporting, but I think it's becoming a little more decentralized now, spreading out to podcasts and Substack newsletters. And so, not only in terms of making sure that we're conveying accurate information, but guiding our listeners, our audiences to those sources where we know, because we've been doing this a while, and we can vet these sources, and we can say, well, yeah, that reporter's good, that reporter's good, that cable news show is good, Lawrence O'Donnell, Rachel Maddow, et cetera. Um, and so we can be kind of guides as far as leading people toward the correct information. Because if we decide to give up, if we decide to say, hey, you know what, I didn't like the way the election went, so I'm giving up on politics, that's the end. That's
Yeah.
when everything falls apart. That you're just, it's now at the point where it's not unlike ABC News or Mark Zuckerberg or anyone else saying, do whatever you want, Donald. We're right there with you. Here's $1 million for the inauguration. And, you know, we don't want to be like that. We have to, in addition to having fun on social media, which is an important aspect of it, we have to make sure that we use our platforms to guide people to the correct information. It's so important.
Yeah, I mean, I know it seems hyperbolic and it's probably overused and I don't really care, but I keep going back to Orwell, right? And Orwell did say
Yeah.
there's truth and there was untruth, and if you clung to the truth even against the whole world, you were not mad. That's from 1984, which feels
Mhm.
awfully prescient today, but like
Oh, yeah.
right? But it is for a reason, and you know, Tim Snyder's warnings make sense also for lots of reasons, for all the reasons. But we do not want to just abandon the idea of truth, because that really is the bulwark against so
Hmm.
much of this. And
Yeah.
and the more they can push us away from, you know, platforming the truth, the more they can degrade society into accepting whatever they say. And that chaos machine, that hamster wheel you were talking about before, which
Hmm.
made so much sense and was so well articulated, in what happens in the wake of that whole thing when you create that sort of perpetual chaos, is what people do is they don't know where to look. So they look to the one central figure that's in front of them, and they're like, well, okay, well, this person is the person, and then you can do anything. You know,
Yeah.
then they can tear their minds to pieces, as Orwell also talks about, and then rebuild them of their own making. And that's
Hmm.
what we're facing as a society, which, you know, is another reason, just the last thing, which is another reason why, and I get lots of shit for this and I don't care. I'm not leaving Twitter. I'm not going to leave Twitter. I get why people have left. I understand. I'm on Blue Sky too. It's wonderful. So it's the grotto from, you know, the Playboy Mansion, because it's nice and warm and sexy, and everybody over there is beautiful, and you know, it's euphoric, and you get a blowjob, and you can't stay there though, because you're going to get skin slip and an STD. So you got to come out sometimes and go outside. And outside is not always pretty. It's not the grotto. There's not painted boobies in the, you know, regular outside. But So long digression there. But Twitter is not the grotto. And when I see my MAGA friends trolling me every minute, which is telling me I'm irrelevant when they basically beat themselves with their small penises to be the first one to reply to me to tell me I'm irrelevant, they say, "Why are you still here? Why haven't you left yet?" And I'm like, "That's why. That's why. That is exactly why. Because you want to push me out and say, see, she ran away."
Yeah.
And I can listen, American flag, eagle, lots of numbers in your mommy's basement. I've been through much worse. Trust me. I have faced down some evil shit. So you telling me I'm fat is just not going to chase me off of this platform. I appreciate how hard you work to be the first person to tell me I'm fat. But there's 72 people behind you. They have mugshots that I didn't take of me as a crackhead. So we're gonna just like let's just put that aside. You're not gonna chase me away because
Yeah.
I'm not going to give that seed the ground. So
Yeah.
because I want to tell the truth. And I'm going to keep saying it, even if it's a shitstorm of wind coming at me. And you are telling the truth, and we have to hold on tightly to that with
Yeah.
both hands all the time.
Yeah, I admire that. I think that's good. In fact, Stephanie Miller was saying the same thing
Oh,
this
really?
morning about staying on Twitter. And I have abandoned Twitter. I've been one of those people who ran off. I
I'm
didn't
not
cancel
judging
my
you.
account. No, no, but I have, I think, reasonable justification for it. But I didn't cancel my account. I still have my account
They
active
don't because
there.
they'll take it.
Yeah, they'll absolutely squat on it. The trolls will take over or whatever.
Yeah.
But I did delete my entire Twitter history, 124,000 tweets over 15 years,
Oh
and
my
that
God.
was a painful thing. But I no longer wanted to be susceptible to Elon Musk using the content I've provided to that platform as to fuel grok or whatever that is, and
Yeah.
uh, to uh, to feed his algorithm, to feed his wealth, and so I just decided enough's enough. I can't support this Nazi appeaser. I can't support this megalomaniac, this oligarch who
Mm,
has essentially unlimited power. Speaking of Palpatine,
yeah.
and and so I and when Blue Sky became a thing, I thought, well, okay, this makes sense. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
plant my flag over in Blue Sky and do what I can on
Yeah.
that platform. And I quite honestly, my following on Blue Sky is now at the same level it was on Twitter,
Yeah.
which is still relatively modest, but it's I can still have a similar effect by being on Blue Sky as I did on Twitter. So it's like a one-to-one even exchange, as they say
Yeah.
in retail.
And no
Yeah.
shade because I think everybody has to do what they have to do in this moment and in every moment. And I respect everyone's particular opinions or approaches to things. So like
Hmm.
I understand 1000% that is, your choice and I respect that. And hopefully, Twitter as a platform comes back in some way as a sane-ish sort of
Hmm.
platform for people to play nice. But it's pretty horrible and toxic and it is not fun to be there. But
Right.
but I respect everybody's got different decisions. I have friends who've dealt with, illnesses and they're really scared of what's going to happen with, insurance and they just can't be over there because it stresses them out too much it's just
Yeah.
too in their face. And I
Yeah.
I get it. And that's the other thing too, is like everybody's got to, my friend always says, I don't want to yuck your yum, which is an expression I'd never heard before. Like that's, but I get it. Like if that's your
Hmm.
thing, that's fine. And I think that's the other thing too, is that there's a mutual respect here that we have to have for each other, that there's an arc, there's
Hmm.
a spectrum of how people are going to be in this moment. And to show up for each other, we have to be respectful of where people are on that arc because it's not going to be the same for everybody. It's just not.
Yeah.
You're going to have people who
Yeah.
want to tap out all the time. You're going to have people who want to punch throats all the time. You're going to have lots of people in between.
Yeah.
We need all of them. So, like, I totally respect your decision, and I have a lot of friends. Most of my friends have just left the platform
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah. And I want to issue just a small warning about content on the Meta platforms. I know there's a temptation because Mark Zuckerberg is no longer going to be fact checking over there to say things that are patently untrue. And I know in the context of jokes, we can sometimes do it. I've done it. We've all done it. But I do want to caution listeners to our crossover episode here that defamation is still a real thing. Defamation lawsuits
Yeah.
are an actual thing, and they're, especially in the political realm, they're becoming more and more of a weapon as we move on. Slap
Mm.
lawsuits,
Yes.
strategic lawsuits against political participation.
Mm.
Even though many of them they get thrown out, there are many state laws against slap suits, but it's again the punishment by litigation, the punishment by legal fees that you want to be
Mhm.
concerned about. So um, do what you need to do. I'm not, smacking the posts out of anyone's hands as they type up their derogatory thing about Zuckerberg or whatever,
Yeah.
but watch your step because people are crazy about using lawsuits to punish their enemies, and that is a real thing. Whether it's copyright lawsuits, there are copyright trolls out there, law firms that are making a fortune on shaking down people on social media. There are people who use defamation lawsuits to do the same sorts of things. So protect yourself. Be wise about your opposition to what's going on.
1,000%. That is
Yeah.
incredibly important advice. And because the trolls now that went from being epidemiology experts to to military withdrawal experts to vaccination experts to electoral experts to
Yeah. Yeah.
now they are defamation lawsuit experts, which is nice because every other tweet they're like, Defamation, that's defamation." I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like I can't call him melon-hued madman. They're like, defamation. He's not melon-hued.
Yeah. It's like free speech suddenly becomes irrelevant. That's their
Right.
whole thing. It's free speech, free speech. I get to say whatever I want as long as I'm perpetuating my anti-woke platform. But you can't say that mean thing about me or else I'm going to sue you for defamation.
Exactly.
Doesn't make
Exactly.
any sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
that's
he,
where we are.
and
Yeah.
then my favorite is this that you should be sued for defamation because you are a traitor and you are trafficking in lies and you are spreading propaganda. I'm like, you're literally defaming me
Yeah, exactly.
as we speak. Like, how does that work? Oh, but you know what? Logic, rational, reason. Yeah. Well, Bob, holy moly.
Yeah. This is
Talking to you
fun.
is
This is
always
we
like
need to do this
therapy.
again. It really is. And we need to do this more often. We need to do more of these crossover simulcast episodes.
I
And plus,
agree.
I get to do your show and you get to do my show, and we only have to record one thing and then we can both use it. See, it's the economy of podcasting.
It's more time to be in the grotto. Gives us
Right.
more time to
Yep.
get sexy in the grotto, which I know one person who actually was there and experienced it in real life and was like,
Really?
oh, oh yeah. They're like,
Yeah.
it was everything and more that you have probably ever imagined it to be. Like they saw things in there, yeah, that would
Yeah.
probably scare small children and dogs.
Yeah, see, the grotto would be fun, except for the fact that I'd probably bump into Bill Maher and then I'd have to yell at him for the whole time, and that would just ruin everyone's. Talk about yucking someone's yum, whatever the phrase.
Ooh, I'm like, this is the reaction I get when I just
Yeah,
think about him.
I
And
just assume he's always there,
yeah, yeah.
with his coffee table loaded with
It's-
whatever he's drinking on his podcast and smoking and all that stuff.
yeah, it's like
Yeah,
this is
but
the only place I can come to get laid because women won't talk to me in real life.
yes, no one likes him anymore, so he has
Right,
to.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Ugh. Well, there goes the whole crowd of fantasy. Thanks for that, Bob. Let's
Yeah,
get back to
sorry about that.
Chekhov's earworm. No, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this, Joe. This is just a blast, and we'll have to do it again soon.
I love it. I love it. And I agree with you. We should do it much more often. And
Mm.
we'll talk about this again offline because I have a lot of ideas coming up for 25, my friend. A lot of
Great.
ideas. And
Oh, we're
yeah.
both going to be at Sexy Liberal DC on January 18th. So I'll be there. Kimberly's going to be there. We're all going to be there for the big finale of the Sexy Liberal Save the World tour. Yeah, it's, I don't even know what to say because 2 days before the inauguration, what do we celebrate? I guess we have to celebrate the existence of independent media and
Yeah.
how we got
Yeah.
to
You know,
fight the good
celebrate
fight.
tits. Tits are good. I think we just just generally celebrate
I can get
tits.
behind that.
I
Sure.
mean, we're getting a lot more moobs back in the White House, so like at least some version of tits. But yeah, I mean, who doesn't like
Oh
a good
man.
pair of tits? So maybe we could
Yeah.
celebrate that.
Yeah.
Stephanie and
Good.
I are getting married in DC, so there's that.
Oh,
Nuptials.
outstanding. Yeah.
Yeah, we can celebrate that. But I think that
Congratulations.
thank you so much. Yes, I told her we should get married at the rally the day before the inauguration. I just think that would be amazing. But we'll
Oh
see.
man.
She wrote nuptials. I don't have mine yet, but I can work on it. Roses are red, violets are blue. You were a lesbian, now I'm one too.
Perfect.
You
There you
are listening.
go. You're
Not
all
passive.
set.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we'll talk there, but I want to talk to you just in general about lots of stuff because I have lots of ideas, and we should definitely have an incredible time. I can't wait to meet you guys in person, you and Kimberly. Like it's weird that we've never met in person, so we'll meet in person for the first
Yeah.
time.
Really looking forward to it. It's
Me
going to be a
too.
blast. The Warner
Yeah.
Theater, it's going to be pay-per-view as well, sexyliberal.com for tickets and times, etc. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say who else is going to be there, but I do know a few other names. Has Stephanie been talking about it?
Yeah, Harry Dunn is going to be there. George
Yep.
Conway is going to
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah.
Who am I forgetting?
Olivia Troy.
Olivia Troy, yes, yes.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, it's
and
going to be.
some others possibly. I know Carl Frisch is going to be there. I think me and Carl are going to be opening,
Oh my
just
God.
doing
I'm
our
so
little,
excited. Okay, now
yeah,
I'm so excited. Look, we're gonna go out. We're gonna go out with a bang. We're gonna go out in
yeah.
the we're gonna go out in the grotto, uh, of our making. Well, okay. This is so fun. And again, like that's what we gotta do, right? Is we have to
Yeah.
sort of try to find the silver linings in all the clouds. But thank you for doing this with me too. I had so much
Great,
fun.
thank you. We'll see you
I-
next time, and we'll
yeah.
we'll talk later about your big ideas.
Okay. Yep. Stay tuned
Okay,
for all of that. Thanks
sounds good.
everybody. Yeah. Thanks to Bob's audience as well, guys. Thanks to my audience, pending the name of the biscuits, autocratic biscuits. We'll
Autocratic
see.
biscuits with JoJo
Autocratic
for yours.
biscuits. I
Yeah.
mean, stranger things have happened. Uh, yeah. Okay. We'll see you next time, everybody. And Bob, see you next time. Have an amazing week or 2 weeks. I'll see you in a week or something like that. Just
Yeah.
a little
10
over a week.
days. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
10
got
days.
it.
Okay. See you in 10
Okay.
days. What Donald Trump's sentencing will happen first, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well,
Looking forward to that.
that concludes
Okay.
this episode of the Yet to Be Unnamed Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast,
Right.
simulcast with the one and only Bob Seska.
Take care.
Thank you, Bob.
Bye bye.
Bye, guys.